Welcome to Warhammer Warscroll Review. In this video, we'll be taking a look at the Skaven Pestilens unit, the Plague Furnace.
Warscroll Review.
The Plague Furnace is a very unique behemoth leader for Clan Pestilens. It can deal out some damage while buffing nearby clan units. 12 wounds with a 4-up save is not bad, but it's so big it will rarely be able to hide from getting shot down. It is a 4-inch movement that increases by 1 for every 3 Skaven models within an inch. Now, since the Plague Furnace is moving around on a 120mm base, it has a lot of space to surround with small Skaven models. However, this ability is a little less straightforward and reliable than you'd think. When placing models, you will start by surrounding the base with 2 concentric circles. If left completely surrounded, it will not be able to move at all, so the Skaven player has to leave a gap in the screen models to be able to move away. In this case, it is good to have another solid screening unit in front of the furnace and rats. If the gap is left in the front, the furnace is open to be charged. On the other hand, if the Plague Furnace is blocked in the front, it can't move forward. For versatility's sake, place a unit on either side of the furnace, moving along with it. How the Skaven models are best positioned depends on how aggressive the furnace is going to be. In a combat-heavy army, the Skaven player may leave a gap in front of the model to be able to keep the furnace moving along with the army, while a shooting army may leave the gap in the back so the furnace can move away from danger. The other problem that is posed is that the furnace is likely going to be faster than the Skaven moving it. The initial move will be fast and reliable, but in subsequent turns, the Skaven player may not be able to maximize the amount of rats in range of the furnace. This model has 3 melee weapons. Its rusty wheels and spikes, the Plague Priest's warpstone-tipped staff, and the Great Censer atop the furnace. The wheels are D6 attacks with no rend and damage 1. If there are 10 or more Skaven models nearby, it can make 2d6 attacks on the charge. In either case, this is an okay addition for killing hordes, but won't really be too effective. The warpstone-tipped staff is 3 attacks with no rend, but damage D3. Like the wheels, this will prove ineffective against most targets. The Great Censer is the main damage-dealing weapon in combat, and is a bit unique. Pick a point within 3 inches of the furnace and deal mortal wounds to all units within 2 inches of the point on a roll of 4 up. This weapon starts out doing D3 mortal wounds and decreases as it takes damage until it's dealing out only 1 mortal wound. This weapon can be pretty powerful if used in a big combat. Remember that it can't hurt itself, but can hurt other friendly models, so pick the point wisely. After it takes just 3 wounds, the furnace starts dealing only D3 mortal wounds. So while this weapon is fairly powerful at full health, it degrades rather quickly and is best not relied on to win a combat. Sometimes it's a good idea to keep the furnace 3 inches away from the enemy, with the Skaven screening unit in between them. This will deal damage to the rats, but keep the furnace out of the enemy's reach. The Great Censer is not the only chance of mortal wounds for the Plague Furnace. The model's Plague Fumes ability deals D3 mortal wounds to units within 3 inches in the hero phase. This gives the furnace the potential to do a bit more damage over time. In addition to the furnace's offense ability, it can always play a support role. The Plague Priest that rides it can use a prayer in the hero phase. On a roll of 3 up, it can choose one of 2 abilities to affect a Pestilence unit within 13 inches. On a roll of 1, the model takes a mortal wound. One prayer is called Rabid Fever and allows the targeted unit to pile in an attack before it is slain in a combat phase. Use its ability with a screen unit or an otherwise exposed unit of Plague Monks or Censer Bearers. It won't be quite as helpful with the other units, but this can be used to some effect on the Verminlord Corruptors or a few others. The other prayer is Blessed with Filth and allows the unit to reroll all failed wound rolls. Again, this prayer is best used on a large unit of Plague Monks or Censer Bearers, but don't overlook its uses on a Plague Claw or the Verminlord. Both prayers have their uses and really depend on how the Skaven player is using their army. Rabid Fever is best used when playing defensively, while Blessed with Filth can be used for offensive purposes. Not only can it use prayers, the furnace adds 1 to bravery for Skaven Pestilens models within 5 inches. All that said, it's easy to see that the Plague Furnace is fairly expensive at 200 points, and should be kept safe at all times. Not only does its speed benefit from having hordes of Skaven around it, it can really use the models to screen it from unwanted combats. Either keep a screen outside of range for the furnace to get dragged into combat, or just keep 2 or 3 tight circles of rats around the furnace to keep it at about 2 or 3 inches from the enemy, keeping it out of reach from other melee weapons, but in range of its sensor. In any case, the Plague Furnace should be kept near the rest of the army. There are only a few ways to augment the furnace's abilities. In a Skaven Pestilens army, a Plague Furnace will see the most improvement. The Plague Priest atop the furnace can use prayers, and has the necessary keywords to trigger the battle trait Echoes of the Great Plagues. On a natural 6 when rolling to activate a prayer, the Skaven player can pick one of 5 Great Plagues. Each Great Plague can be used once per game. One plague increases the roll for prayers, one can make an enemy attack friendly units, and the rest do mortal wounds. All the offensive plagues had the typical pestilence range of 13 inches. Each plague is situationally effective, but the +1 to pray is often going to be the first choice unless one of the others has a perfect target. If the Plague Furnace is the general, there are a couple command traits that prove effective. Master of Rot and Ruin would allow them to reroll prayer rolls. On the other hand, Verminous Valor would likely have the most positive effect on the furnace, allowing it to pass off wounds to a pestilence unit within 3 inches on a roll of 4 up. This actually would make a furnace fairly durable and effectively double its wounds. Skaven Pestilens also has access to a few artifacts that would be helpful. The Fumigatus would probably work a bit better than the Brooding Blade at dealing mortal wounds. This artifact deals a mortal wound to a unit within 6 inches on a roll of 3 up at the start of each combat phase. Bestowing the Plague Priest atop the furnace with a Liber Bubonicus would allow it to use its Pestilent prayers in addition to its normal Noxious prayers. This would grant it the ability to use Pestilent Breath or Wither on a roll of 3 up. These prayers are not only influential on their own, but this artifact would give the Pestilence player another chance at manifesting a Great Plague. Pestilent Breath would increase the furnace's mortal wound output, and Wither can add 1 to wound rolls against the afflicted unit. Veksler Shroud is another powerful artifact that works well with the furnace. This item would keep the furnace a bit safer, subtracting 1 from hit rolls for enemies targeting it and shooting. In a Clan Pestilence force, the Skaven player can make use of their allies. Taking a wizard would give the furnace a chance at Mystic Shield. As far as battalions, the Plague Furnace can be included in a Congregation of Filth. This battalion includes 1 Plague Furnace and 2 or more units of Plague Monks, and costs a bit over 100 points. While not directly benefiting the furnace, this is an interesting synergy with the command trait Verminous Valor. The battalion gives the Plague Monks a save on a 6 against wounds and mortal wounds. The command trait deals a mortal wound to a nearby Pestilence unit on a 4 up instead of the furnace. This mortal wound could be further blocked by the Congregation of Filth's save. All this means the furnace gains a more durable screen. When the Plague Furnace is paired with 2 or more units of Plague Sensor Bearers, they can be included in a Plague Smog Congregation. Units in the battalion would be -1 to hit in the shooting phase. Veksler Shroud would be pretty effective with this ability, granting the Plague Furnace -2 to hit. The other portion of this battalion is that it enhances the Poisonous Fumes ability to trigger on a 2 up instead of a 4 up. Outside of a Skaven Pestilence force, a Plague Furnace can fit into a Chaos Grand Alliance, but does not work well as an ally since it will take up half of the points allowed. When facing a Plague Furnace, remember that taking it down is not too difficult. If the player can manage to do just 3 wounds to it, its mortal wound output is significantly diminished. The Plague Furnace receives a 4 out of 5. It can be involved in quite a few synergies and poses as a solid support piece to a Clan Pestilence force. What do you think of the Plague Furnace? What other War Scrolls would you like to see reviewed on the channel? Let me know your answers and thoughts in the comments below, and thanks for watching.